Good morning, everyone. Today is the 2nd of May, 2019. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome to the Potter Expositor. Well, I had some real problems trying to figure out what to title this morning. As you can see, we're going to talk about a little bit about the Barr hearing. And I think it's amazing. You know, Barr and Mueller had long been friends, and I think that's probably changed. So that's why I first named this A.G. Barr with friends like Mueller, who needs enemies, because of course Mueller basically turned on Barr and has basically put him. Well, it's not going to hurt Barr, not really, but it just shows the character or lack thereof of Mueller. And of course, the Democrats, the leftist Marxists, are calling for Barr's impeachment because he's not doing what they want him to do. We're going to talk a little bit about that this morning, but before I go there, let's look at the other half of the title for this morning. And let me double check and make sure everything's up and running right. Looks like it is. The chat is on. Hello, everyone, as you come in. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between some screens today, so please pardon me for that. And also, as usual, we have some problems with the internet, so I apologize for any skipping and all of that occurs. So the second part of this title is, or Rome burns while Nero fiddles. Now, why did I say that? Well, because that's exactly what our leaders are doing. While our country is under attack, while we have enemies inside our government and inside our nation that are more dangerous than our supposed enemies over in the Middle East or other places in the world, we have these problems going on here, and it's like they're totally oblivious. And I mean all of them. I'm not making any exceptions to that. Of course, their agenda is to basically short-circuit the Make America Great Again agenda of President Trump, and I might add, all of us who want to fully restore the constitutional republic of the United States of America. But that's what they do. They're sitting there and they're doing all of these other things, enjoying themselves, pointing fingers, false accusations, and I equate that to Nero fiddling while Rome burns because, of course, the story is that Nero had the fire set in Rome to destroy it. And then he sat back and he fiddled. Well, they didn't have fiddles in those days. The instruments that we know as violins and those types of things didn't appear until the 11th century, so it was probably a cithara, which is a wooden instrument with 4 to 7 strings. But that's not really important. It's the euphemism that matters. In other words, Nero did all these things to destroy the very city and country and people that he was supposed to assist, to rule over, protect. And instead, he caused all of these things to bring on their destruction. Now, it took a few more years before Rome fell, of course, but the point is that that's what we're seeing today. They've set all of these fires all over the nation, all over and across the world, but particularly here with the leftist Marxist Antifa, the drug cartels, which so many of them are a part of, the insurrection in Mexico, the insurgency, which I've been talking about for years, all of these things. They've done all of this, and then they sit back and all they want to do is engage in junior high school name calling and false accusations. So that's why I said that's where we are right now, and it's tragic. That's why I say we need to figure that we're on our own, no matter if President Trump does everything he wants or nothing at all. I think this is all proving that it's really on us, and we're going to have to make the proper arrangements to make it through this, and I pray that we all do. So that's the first thing. Let me get on to this thing with Barr. Before I do that, because I am going to play a real short clip. I wanted to mention this thing that Chris Cuomo of CNN said. He said that Antifa is good because it stands against neo-Nazis. You know, Cuomo constantly shows his ignorance of history and reality. All of the time. For instance, he said that only CNN and the news media could look at the secret documents that were released, the WikiLeaks and all that, which is totally false. And he's done some other things. But this one here I wanted to address because obviously he said, well, Antifa is good because they stand against the neo-Nazis. He apparently doesn't get that anti-fascists and Antifa are communists. And basically, the neo-Nazis and the Stalinists, the communists, yeah, they stood against each other, but they're both authoritarian systems. And he's trying to say that the Antifa is good because they stand against the fascists. Well, what fascists are we talking about? I agree that the United States is in a bad situation right now. We're more of an oligarchy than anything else. We're entering fascism. But the real point of this thing with Cuomo is he's equating conservatives with fascists, and he's not, or the neo-Nazis, and he's not understanding that the Antifa are in fact communist based. So, those kinds of statements by Cuomo just show his ignorance or his complicity. I'm not sure. But I wanted to bring that up because both fascism and Stalinism, socialism, communism, which the Antifa represent, they're murderous. They're murderous, authoritarian tyrants either way. So Cuomo is just, he doesn't see the big picture. And of course, he has an agenda, and the agenda is to do anything contrary to what MAGA is and contrary to what the restoration of the constitutional republic is. Okay, let's get into Barr. I'm going to do some things this morning. Let me caution you before I get started. This may be boring for some people. Anytime you get into law, into the Constitution, into court procedure, things like that, people have a tendency to go, oh, okay, yeah, right. And I don't blame you. I am not a lawyer. I do not have a Juris Doctorate. I cannot give legal advice. However, I do have a degree, a bachelor's degree in law and justice administration. What does that mean? Basically, in the day when I got my bachelor's degree, it was like getting a paralegal today, but even more expansive. I learned about how to run courts, how to run police departments, how to run all of the juvenile courts, probation officers, things like that. But in the degree that I got, the largest part of it was going through court cases or taking different types of events that have occurred and finding out what kind of briefs to file to the court, and what type of filings to make, address the proper conditions, the charges, be they criminal, or the complaints, be they civil. And I spent 4 years at it. So it's been a while since I've done this, but I do know how to research, for instance, U.S. reports, which is where the Supreme Court files, its decisions, its opinions. And we're going to cover one of those today because of something that was said on the American intelligence media yesterday. So hold on to your hat. Just be advised, I'm not an attorney. I can't give legal advice, but we're gonna look at this from a study point of view. Okay. So I want to make sure I approach this correctly. If you want more information about the topics we're going to talk about today in conjunction with Barr's testimony yesterday, a good source, an excellent source, one I highly recommend, is KrisAnne Hall on YouTube. I believe she also has a blog. KrisAnne Hall is an attorney. I'm not sure where she practices, but she is fully capable of explaining in a better way and in more detail than what I'm going to cover today, because I don't want to bore you for one reason. You don't come here to get all of that. But some things were done yesterday that I think bear upon the direction of where we're going in this other part. First of all, the Mueller's no friend of Barr's. And as a matter of fact, at this point, they're probably enemies. And if they're not, they shortly will be. in my estimation. And number two, that all of this that's going on in the Senate and in the House and in the government generally is going on in a way that they've started all these fires, all of these problems, and they're ignoring it all, just like Nero did when he went fiddling. So I wanted to talk about the situation with the grand juries that have been involved in all this Russia probe and all of that. So in the description box below is a link to a program that American intelligence media did yesterday. It's called Mueller Hides Key Evidence. Now, it's about an hour long, a little less. But Mr. McKibben and Douglas Gabriel get into some very important information, and they refer to some information in the Mueller report on page 177 of Volume 2 that I wanted to double check. I wanted to go and look at that. I didn't want to take their word for it, and it stunned me, actually, even though I kind of knew it from the way things work, to see what Mueller did and how he bent this particular case that they mentioned, Williams versus the United States. We need to talk about that because it's how our entire court system and jury system has been corrupted by a corrupt federal DOJ. That's just the bottom line. And I want to show you how Mueller addressed it. And I'm certain that this report that he put out, there's no way I'm going to go through the whole report. I mean, we could do that, but there's so many cases that are listed. I'm not going to do that. I've read through the whole report, but I'm not going to go look up every single case. Apparently, Michael McKibben's people did that and found this situation with Williams versus U.S., which we're going to address. But I just want to show you that we've stepped away a long way from what all of this judicial stuff was supposed to be in the first place. And I think we all know that. But let's get right into it and talk about it a little bit. Let me turn the page here. This program by AIM yesterday addresses this situation with Williams versus the United States. And basically, in a nutshell, what it says is, what the Williams case says is, there were these two lower court decisions, first a district court and then an appeals court, 10th Circuit, I believe, that upheld the lower court decision saying that the prosecutors must give exculpatory evidence in a hearing, in a grand jury hearing. When it got to the Supreme Court, believe it or not, they overturned it, and they said, no, a grand jury is not the place where a prosecutor needs to bring exculpatory evidence. Yeah, it actually says that, and we're going to go through that. It's an injustice because, the purpose of a grand jury or any jury, well, a grand jury in the federal system or even in some state systems is basically to determine if the probable cause is there, that a crime was committed, first of all, that the person being investigated committed that crime, and that the charges can be filed, an indictment filed or an information, or there are several different names for them. But in other systems, they're called preliminary hearings, and it's basically the same thing. The prosecution goes in, the defendant shows up. Really, the defense doesn't do much. They basically present the prosecutor the evidence that they have of a crime. The problem in all of this is why hide the exculpatory? Why are we filing the charges in the first? Why are we asking the court for a warrant or for it to be remanded over for trial or any of that if there's exculpatory evidence? Why do we do that? Well, in the old days, the grand juries, and I want you to look this up. I don't even care if you go to Wikipedia. Look up what a grand jury is supposed to do. A grand jury, let's talk about that, is an investigatory body of laymen, of lay people brought in, a jury of your peers. It comes from the Old English common law. And basically, it's to make sure that prosecutorial misconduct does not occur, but that there is sufficient evidence, probable cause, to bring an indictment, okay? That's fine and dandy. But what's happened is it's no longer a protection for the innocent. It really isn't. Not in the federal system. What's happened is that they have professional, basically what they are, grand jurors that do the bidding of the prosecutors. So when you look through this stuff, like in Wikipedia, when you look up grand jury, it'll tell you that the purpose of the grand jury is an investigative body, and it's large. It's called grand because of the number of people on it. And the prosecutor brings the proof that or the information that a crime was committed and the circumstances of that. And then the grand jury, the purpose of it was to make sure, I'm going to just give you an example. Let's say that there's a prosecutor that doesn't like John. And the John, instead, he brings out a garbage can on trash day with a red lid instead of a green one. This is just hypothetical, but it's to show you what I'm talking about. So the prosecutor wants to get him, so he goes into the grand jury, he calls the grand jury, and he says, well, John here, he violated the law on aesthetics, well, whatever, what you can have in front of your house, whatever. And he had a green lid instead of a red one. Well, the grand jury, the purpose of it was to look at it and say, that's not even a law. Why are you bringing this charge against this guy on a law that doesn't exist? Now, do you hear this collusion thing that we've been hearing now for so long? Think of the collusion thing as a red lid instead of a green one, or vice versa. That's what's happened here. And so the grand jury is to say, no, we're not going to file an indictment because that's not even a crime, or the elements of the crime are not there. That kind of thing. Now, the other part of it is that in the early days, they were to look at exculpatory evidence. So there's been some legal battle back and forth, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. But you'll even see it in Mueller's statement where he kind of hides it. And I don't believe that, the members of the Senate are that stupid about the Williams case or about grand juries. But he slipped this thing in, as Ames showed yesterday, kind of to be a buffer, a protection for him and his team. And you'll see that here in just a minute. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I want you to see some of the basics. So go look at that thing about grand juries. It is for the protection of the people. It is for that. But what has happened is it's been turned into, no surprise, a weapon against the people. That's what's happened. And Chris Ann Hall can explain that very well. We could get into jury nullification and all that, but I don't want to do that today. I want to stick with the grand jury and its operation, the way Mueller used it. So let's go look at this in Volume 2, page 1. I hope I explained that well. The thing about law is that it is complicated. It doesn't need to be, okay? The law doesn't need to be complicated. It can be very easy, actually. But lawyer craft and law fare, which is kind of a play on warfare, has developed. And it's developed because the state wants to have power. It wants to be the ultimate power. And it will do anything to keep it. In the Bundy case, now that's a little different. They had the grand jury with the indictments, and I'm not going to talk about that. Other than you might be saying, well, how come the judge was able to dismiss the case in the Bundy trial based upon exculpatory evidence? Well, because that was the trial phase, you see, which is the government and most precedent says that the grand jury, the prosecutor doesn't need to bring exculpatory evidence. The point is, if there is exculpatory evidence, what the hell is the prosecutor doing bringing the charges in the first place, or bringing this information to the grand jury? If he knows that there's exculpatory information, why is he bringing it? Another example real quick, and then I'll move on. Joe shoots John. Okay? Prosecutor files a charge against Joe for murder, right? And he says, yeah, on such and such a day, you're supposed to answer the who, what, where, when, why, how. Well, apparently they're not doing that. They're leaving out information because of the Supreme Court decision, or this opinion we're going to talk about, which was rendered in 1992. So what happens is that, let's say Mueller brings a charge against Joe for shooting John and committing murder. But he leaves out the fact the exculpatory evidence, which is what? Well, John had a 30-06 and had shot at Joe 5 times before Joe finally got his gun and shot John to protect himself. How would you feel if that type of exculpatory evidence was left out? That's how bad the federal system has become. Where the prosecutor should have figured that out, prosecutorial discretion, it's called, could say, oh, well, look at this. John was defending himself. We're not going to bring, and that happens, that does happen, okay? But in this case, like in the Mueller case, it has not happened. It's been misused. It's corrupt. It's disgustingly corrupt. So let's go to this. I want to read this to you real quick, okay? All right. In the description box is the information. You can go there now. Read this along with me. That's where I'm going to read this. This is from the Mueller report, volume 2, page 177, paragraph III, that's 3. This is what AIM brought up yesterday, and I thought, what? So I went and I looked at this, and then I went to U.S. reports and looked at the actual case, which we're going to cover not in much detail, but just a little bit. Okay, so in this, it says, this paragraph 3 on page 177 of the Mueller report mentions United States versus Williams, 504 U.S. 36, 1992. And what Mueller says here, this is how he describes this, okay? He says, finally, the grand jury cannot achieve its but he's already mentioned Williams versus U.S. It's his safeguard for the stuff he's done. But listen how he twists this. Because he hides it. It sounds real nice what he says here. Finally, the grand jury cannot achieve its constitutional purpose absent protection from corrupt acts. Duh. Serious federal criminal charges generally reach the Article 3 courts based on an indictment issued by a grand jury. Cobbledick versus United States, 309 U.S. 323, 327, 1940. The Constitution itself makes the grand jury a part of the judicial process. And the grand jury's function is enshrined in the Fifth Amendment. We're going to talk about that in a minute. U.S. Constitution Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a serious crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. The whole theory, listen to this, the whole theory of the grand jury's function is that it belongs to no branch of the institutional government. Actually, that's a good thing. In other words, it's not answering to any of those. It's a group of citizens coming together to look at the facts, okay? Serving as a kind of buffer or referee between the government and the people. United States versus Williams, 504, pledged to indict no one because of listen how he explains what Williams is here. This is what he says Williams is. So far he said, okay, the grand jury is basically a buffer between the government and the people. It's to protect people from false prosecutions, but that kind of thing. But then he says this. Pledged to indict no one because of prejudice and to free no one because of special favor. Costello, he quotes that, but he quotes it to make it sound like, this is a good thing that he's doing. Costello versus United States 350. If the grand jury were not protected against corrupt interference from all persons, its function as an independent charging body would be thwarted, and an impartial grand jury investigation to determine whether probable cause exists to indict is vital to the criminal justice process. The problem is, Mr. Mueller, you are a corrupt interference. You knew that there was exculpatory evidence, like John shot Joe because Joe had a 30-06 and had shot at him. You had that information, but you corrupted the system, Mr. Mueller. And this happens, ladies and gentlemen, all the time. Let's go to United States versus Williams. It's down, and I'm not. I don't know if you know how to do this. I've supplied the link there to U.S. reports. You can go into the Supreme Court system and look at this opinion. It gets kind of complicated if you're not trained in it, but the link is there, so you don't have to read the entire opinion. That's not necessary. I've put here the basic crux of it. It's about, it goes from pages, 36 to 70. And when you look at those pages, don't look at the PDF page numbers. Look at the actual Supreme Court opinion page number. That's what you need to do, okay? Just so you know, because some people go down on the PDF page and say, oh, I don't find it. Well, you got to look at the actual page numbers in the Supreme Court document itself. But let's read this. The opinion outline is on pages 36 and 37. And like I say, don't use the PDF page. This is what Williams said. Now, I can't believe that the Supreme Court did this. I understand why, because it's an adversarial system. And what they're saying is that the grand jury is the place where, the charges or the probable cause is placed, given to the grand jury to issue the indictment. And the prosecutor, why should he be both the prosecutor and the defense attorney? Because you're not supposed to have your defense attorney there. But I go back to my initial point. Exculpatory evidence at the investigatory stage allows for prosecutorial discretion, like I just gave you with John or whoever. I said John shooting Joe because Joe was shooting at him. Okay? If you leave out that exculpatory evidence, you've committed a corruption upon the court, just like they did on the FISA deal by not saying, and they're going to use this Williams thing to try to justify what they did to the FISA court, but the rules are different there, but Mueller's still trying to pull it. That they didn't want to bring this exculpatory evidence on Clinton having had this dossier drawn up, the Democrats and Clinton drawing this dossier up and having the Ukrainians and the Russians help them to do it, and MI6 and who knows who else, as we all know by now, hopefully. So he figures he doesn't have to cover that because Williams is going to cover him. Do you see that? Let's see what the court said to this, and this is disturbing. This is the U.S. Supreme Court in 1992. Actually, I think let's just read it. This is quoted in court. To the contrary, requiring the prosecutor to present exculpatory as well as inculpatory evidence would alter the grand jury's historical role, transforming it from an accusatory body that sits to assess whether there is adequate basis for bringing a criminal charge into an adjudicatory body that sits to determine guilt or innocence. Now, I agree with that. The problem is in the prosecutor itself, the prosecution itself. It's prosecutorial misconduct. It's a violation of prosecutorial discretion. What's the control on that? They don't say that. Listen to what goes on here. Because it has always been thought sufficient for the grand jury to hear only the prosecutor's side, and consequently that the suspect has no right to present, and the grand jury no obligation to consider exculpatory evidence, it would be incompatible with the traditional system to impose upon the prosecutor a legal obligation to present such evidence. And I cry bullshit. If that's the case, then prosecutors need to lose their immunity. For going to, you see what I'm saying? If you're going to go with this, and I can kind of understand the basis for it, but at the same time, if during the process of this thing, when it goes to trial, which is kind of late really, and you find that a prosecutor has withheld evidence even at the grand jury level, I think that there should be laws in place, statutes, to actually charge the prosecutor with some type of crime. Probably conspiracy, because that's what it would be. Him and whoever else he's working with, conspiracy to commit a crime. And I don't know what it would be called, but I think it needs to be criminal in my own judgment, because that's what's happened here. I mean, it says, right? Mueller says, well, we got to protect the system against corrupt interference. And yet the prosecutor has a corrupt interference and nobody questions it. This is dangerous. And the Supreme Court, I understand why they did it. And normally in a Supreme Court, and the Williams case might not even apply, even though Mueller's trying to use it, because Supreme Court decisions, opinions are very narrow in scope. And I could give you that information today, but it gets way too complicated. Just suffice it to say that Mueller's probably misapplying the Williams case, number one. Number two, he is the corrupt interference, and he's citing Williams and not having to bring in exculpatory evidence to basically cover himself is what he's doing. Okay, that's the first part. It's in the description box. I've got the link there. You can go look at it. And like I say, I'm it's difficult to present this because of the legalese and some of the information that just seems totally ridiculous. Let me say it again, okay? They're fiddling while Rome burns. They're fiddling while our government falls apart, while our people are in danger. That's what they're doing. And they've corrupted the system, just like Nero was doing his orgies and executing Christians that he falsely accused. So Mueller and his band of senators and Democratic senators, leftist Marxists, LEOs, judges, etc., are doing exactly the same thing. Okay. I can't end the discussion without a little short discussion on juries, because we've just talked about a grand jury. Where does this come from? What's the point? Again, I want you to go to Chris Ann Hall and look at her. She has all kinds of great discussions there and lectures and things. So go to her. But we must talk about what the Constitution says just for a few minutes about juries. And this isn't all-inclusive, but it's the main point. The first one is the Fifth Amendment in the Bill of Rights. We all know that you can't be forced to commit self-incrimination. That's what most people know. But let's read the whole thing for ourselves. And you can look this up for yourself too. The Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That's the entire Fifth Amendment. It has been corrupted, ladies and gentlemen, by corrupt prosecutors and corrupt lawyers. It has been. I don't want to go into all the ways that they've circumvented this, but you've seen a case here in Williams versus United States as an example. The right was expanded in the Sixth Amendment, and it says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. Okay. Of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, and the seventh. And it also, another place where it's important is in the Seventh Amendment, which says, and it's mostly in civil law, in suits of common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise reexamined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. And then the other place I'd want to mention, it's really the last one, is Article 3, Section 2, which is the judiciary article. And it says there that the trial of all crimes shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crimes have been committed. So those are our jury protections, okay? But even at the grand jury level, and this is why it's so important, prosecutorial misconduct must be addressed by Congress. They gave them immunity. I think it was actually after this 1992 decision. But it needs to be addressed because look what they've done to President Trump and his supporters. I've seen it misused in many other cases where a prosecutor, like the case with Joe shooting John, knows that it was self-defense but went with it anyway. Now there are some places, like in California, I suspect, at least some counties, where if you shoot somebody in self-defense, it's considered a crime. I certainly it's that way in Britain. Those are wrong, but we can't get into that situation here. I know it exists. The point is that prosecutorial discretion in filing a case with a grand jury should not allow the prosecutor to ignore that type of exculpatory evidence. I think that's an error. And if it's going to be done at the grand jury level, because it is an adversarial system, it is a place for for prosecution, to begin the prosecution process. If we are going to say that the prosecutor does not need to bring exculpatory evidence, that should be evidence in and of itself in the trial court, at the very least. And in my estimation, if this is discovered later that the prosecutor filed a malicious prosecution because he knew the person was innocent, he should be held up on charges, not just protected by immunity or given a slap on the wrist, a demotion, or whatever. Like Steve Myrie in the Bundy case, this was the trial level, of course. When they found out that he had hid exculpatory evidence, basically he left. I don't know if that was disciplinary or to protect the system. But what I'm saying here, the whole point of what I'm saying is that our judicial system is corrupt. And to even state in a Supreme Court decision that it's okay to ignore exculpatory evidence of a grand jury in our system is pathetic, disgusting, degrading, and it's destroying our country. So go look at all those things if you like. And like I said, I know some of that was probably boring this morning, but I thought that it was important because AIM I didn't know, I read over it. I didn't even realize what Mueller was saying there, that he was setting up basically by citing Williams. He's slipped in there and he's interpreted incorrectly by and large. He slipped it in there so that he could fall back on it as his excuse for conducting himself in the corrupt, degrading, disgusting, and in my estimation, illegal manner in which he has proceeded. And that tells you a little bit. So go look at AIM's, the link to AIM there in the description box. And also you can look at the Supreme Court U.S. reports if you like and see how they went through it. Just read the first, I think, just the opinion of the court, not all the dissenting information and all that. That gets way too deep. But look at that, and it might be a good little exercise for you. How are we doing here? Are we still? What do you know? No serious interference. I don't know if it's skipping or not. I hope everything's okay. Okay, that shows you what kind of a situation we're in. Remember, everything has been done not to protect the people. That has been withdrawn. Everything is to suppress the people. This is no longer a land of we, the people, or a government of, by, and for the people. This is a government that's been usurped by basically lawyers and oligarchs to our detriment. All right? And this is Congress's fault too. It's not... the fault of this thing spreads across quite a long-range spectrum. But it shows you, I think, how bad it really is. And it's wrong. These things should not be happening here. Not only should we not be an empire that's stretching across the world, inflicting our so-called democracy, which we're not supposed to be in the first place, upon the helpless, or our banking system upon the poor. But we should clean house here in our country. There's an old statement, I'm sure some of you remember this. If there's one lawyer in town, he's the poorest in town. If there are two lawyers in town, they're the richest people in town. And Shakespeare said, remember this? When they take over, the first thing we do is kill all the lawyers. Lawyercraft is evil. I'm not saying we don't need lawyers, but their wordsmithing, their lawfare, and the courts agreeing with them on it. Precedent law is a horrible thing. It has its good side. There's Marbury versus Madison that basically said, no law that is contrary to the Constitution can stand, that it's null and void at its inception. That was good. That's good case law. But do you realize they're even trying to contradict that now? Because the state wants to be all-powerful. And that's not the way it's supposed to work in our system. Enumerated, specific powers were given to the federal government by we the people and the states to take care of things that the individual states and the people couldn't take care of. National defense, for instance. protection of our borders, for instance, which is not being done. That's the purpose of it, of the federal government. And all of the other powers were retained by the people, even those not mentioned were retained by the people, and yet the federal government has usurped way too much. Where power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we are in trouble. And all that we're going through right now, it's going to tear us apart. We're going to be, unless this can be fixed, and I don't know that it can. I mean, Barr yesterday, look at that. What happened there? It's going to balkanize us. Okay, on a lighter note, let me go to this. I do have a short clip I want to show you, and it's real short. There were two things that Barr did yesterday. Well, Barr did a lot of good stuff. I almost named this live stream today, A.G. Barr is growing on me. You know, I was suspicious of him because of Ruby Ridge, because of the Patriot Act, because of his surveillance agreements, because of his stand on the Second Amendment and stuff like that. But he is growing on me. The way he stood up to these Democrats and the rhinos has been pretty spectacular, I think. But I'll just play this for you real fast. I think you'll get a chuckle out of it. I've just put two things together here. Watch this.
I know of no other instance of. But he was also a political appointee, and he was a political appointee with me at the Department of Justice. The letter's a bit snitty, and I think it was probably written by one of his staff people.
Did you make a memorandum of your conversation?
Huh?
Did you make a memorandum?
No, I didn't
or
make
did
a
anyone
memorandum.
Else?
What?
Did anyone, either you or anyone on your staff, memorialize your conversation with Robert Mueller?
Yes.
Who did that?
There were notes taken of the call.
May we have those notes?
No.
A bit snitty from Mueller. You think those guys are going to stay friends? And then Blumenthal says, "Well, may we have your memo?" No. Man, I was cheering. I was cheering. I was laughing so hard I got tears in my eyes. Yeah, and as everybody's reporting, he is saying that he's going after the criminals. Now, this thing with Mueller citing Williams versus U.S., the deep state saying that, you know, they had to violate the Constitution to protect us, which I like. When I said Oliver North did that, that's BS. That's wrong. They're going to use that as a defense, though. They're also going to say that they needed to do these things to protect us, basically, to protect the system. And in the entire defense by them of their corrupt criminal actions, they're not going to mention how seriously they have damaged by going outside the law and outside the Constitution. They're not going to admit or mention the serious damage that they have done to what was left of the constitutional republic and the rule of law. I hope Barr, because he apparently is very good at the law, I hope he goes after all of the culprits. I'd like to see mass arrests. I still don't believe that's going to happen. We're going to see at most a dozen or 24 people in my estimation. And more likely, probably a half dozen. But I think he is going to do it. Let's hope so. I'm from Missouri. I'll believe it when I see it. Okay, let's go to chat. Let's see what you're talking about here. I'm going to run up to the top here. Okay. Yeah, Tim Bloch, Hillary shouldn't be walking around. You know, there's, again, the corrupt system is corrupt from head to foot. I mean, it's like I just showed you this morning. It's horrible. Cyber 54, it could be stall tactics, and Yeah, Christina Wilson, I agree. If Trump doesn't do something, he won't be able to. If he doesn't do something quick, I agree with that 100%. I do. What it can be, though, I've complained about it for a long time that he was in action. And of course, he's justified. He said, "Well, I'm glad I did now because they would have said it was obstruction." Hey, as far as I'm concerned, he's been right on the edge of dereliction of duty. I realize the problem he's been under, but especially the things on the First Amendment, the violations of the Second Amendment, the infanticide, the wars overseas. Mexico is a bigger threat to us than Syria. That's not really even a threat to Israel if they just knock off their baloney over there. But anyway. Okay. I must be missing something here. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these. Yeah, Ed Douglas, that's exactly right. They will destroy everything rather than hand over power. That's what we're looking at. And people are now saying, a lot of folks are saying, the left, from Kevin Shipp to Dan Bongino to Alex Jones to Matt Bracken, everybody says that especially if Barr does collar somebody, yes, it's going to be bad. They are going to hit the streets, leftist Marxists, and they're going to be attacking and trying to destroy cops, conservative legislators, conservatives, Christians. It's going to get bad. Better get that AR-15 and learn how to use it. Yeah, the border is wide open still, and I covered that the other day, how disappointed I was. Not disappointed, but disgusted that the Secretary of Defense, the acting Secretary of Defense, says they're going to provide transportation and mess halls. They just never learn. They just never learn. This is it's not law enforcement to prevent an invasion. I guess let's look at it this way. By their reasoning, if China comes and invades us, the military can't do anything on our soil because that's the responsibility of ICE and Border Patrol. So that's law enforcement, so our military can't stand and stop that invasion. That's how ludicrous this is. Like I said, we've spent our fortune and the lives of many, 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 many in foreign entanglements that were unjustified. And we've done it to the point where now we're in debt, and maybe we won't be able to defend ourselves in our unjust actions, our infanticides, our transgenderism, all the stuff that we've pushed, the destruction of mankind. Maybe we just deserve to be destroyed. I'm hoping that we can repent. We'll see. Oh, Mike, thanks. You're probably explaining to somebody what exculpatory evidence is, and I didn't do that. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. Exculpatory evidence is evidence that shows that you're basically not guilty or you're innocent, or there were mitigating circumstances, like the guy, the Joe that shot John because John was shooting at him. Okay, exculpatory evidence proves that your intent wasn't there more than anything else. Okay? In Hillary's case, in a crime where you don't need to prove intent, they let her go. And then in the situation like with all this stuff with President Trump, they just present the evidence. Supposedly, it's not even evidence. Do you realize that that's another thing I could say. Do you realize that almost the entire Mueller report is hearsay? Read it. Do you know what hearsay is? It's inadmissible in court. Hearsay is not evidence. It's not admissible in court. And yet almost everything that Mueller provides is hearsay or innuendo. He didn't take it to a grand jury because he knew he didn't have anything. Even the grand jury system, as corrupt and fouled up as it is, wouldn't let that pass. Maybe in D.C. they would. But I think he didn't want to take the chance. And then he has Williams versus U.S. to try to, excuse his behavior. The guy's a criminal. Covered up 9/11, sent people to prison and executed people that didn't deserve it. Never spoke up for the innocent. You don't speak up for the innocent, and you consider your career and your prosecutorial status of being a bad guy more important than the lives of innocent people. You're a demon. You need to be exposed, and if there can be criminal charges filed against you, that needs to happen. And I hope he burns in hell in addition to all of that. Yeah, Carol Reed, I agree. These SOBs committed conspiratorial sedition, at the very least. Yeah, they were the ones that did the. There's no such thing as collusion. They try to use collusion to suck in the stupid public. Conspiracy is what it is, and they are guilty of conspiracy. And I shouldn't say they're guilty because it hasn't been adjudicated yet. But talk about grand jury evidence. We could give exculpatory evidence to these guys, and that's what Mueller's trying to do with Williams there in his report. We could go ahead and give that exculpatory evidence, and they'd still be found guilty of conspiracy, and that's the way Barr has to handle this. I'm sorry to hear that, Mitchell Albrecht, that the Glastonbury, Connecticut police threw out your exculpatory evidence. That's what I mean. That's wrong. That's not. And the jury should then, well, you know how I feel about that. They've tried to make the juries, they've tried, and they've been successful, to make the jury subservient to the judge, and that's not the way it works. The jury is the ultimate power in that courtroom, not the judge. But of course, that didn't fit the corrupt federal system or any other of the judicial systems. So they have to tell you that the judge is the final authority. That just isn't the case at all. And that's a corruption when they do that. But I'm sorry that happened to you, but it doesn't surprise me a bit. Okay. Yeah, Daniel Grant, the law is an interpretation. That's true. There are some steadfast things, but then they get... See, what they've done is the steadfast thing, the things that are set in concrete. For instance, the First Amendment, free speech, the Second Amendment, right to bear arms. What they do is they go through and they attack those using different arguments over a period of time, and they weaken it. The courts go along with it, and they never should. I'd like to tell you how to infuse the right thing back in there, but unfortunately, the law of entropy is always going to play in effect, especially when you have evil and conniving, disgusting people, like too many lawyers are, especially those that work for the DOJ. Okay. Trend Education Resources. Oh, that was nice of you to say. God bless and protect you. You are a true patriot. They say thank you. That's very nice. Yeah, Carol, they do make the law complicated because then they can get away with it. Yeah, that's called legalese. And, you know, in the New Testament, Jesus saw the Pharisees were the lawyers, okay? And he saw what they were doing. He said, you know, no, what you're saying, you're bringing as commandments the doctrines of men. No, we're not going your way. So it happens. That's what they do. That's how lawyercraft lawfare works. And if the courts allow them to get away with it, which they do, and if your legislature isn't going to rein them in, and if the executive isn't going to have disciplinary actions against prosecutorial misconduct, so the system needs to be fixed. And I don't know if it can be at this point. Mark says, Joe shoots Obama 20 points. Carefully, you might get a call by the Secret Service. Hiddleston James says, 30-6, John needed a 308. A deplorable? I know. She says, the illegal aliens aren't as thick-headed as Trump supporters. They realized he was all talk 2 years ago. I'm still backing Trump, but I do feel that we need to constantly and I know the problem he's under. If Barr goes through and goes after these conspirators, these criminals, seditionists, and some traitors, if he actually does, and then Trump doesn't go and start to really fix some of this, then we'll know. I don't want to say that it's right that he's been so careful up to this point. He's been timid. That may have been, some people, oh, that's Sun Tzu, At some point, that's not the case. And I'm not certain that that's what he was following. He may have tried to do that initially, but he got suckered in. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought all those people into his cabinet and his administration that were all neocons, warmongers, deep staters. Trump's got some problems. Even Alex Jones called him out on this vaccine thing on the other day, on measles. Do you realize that governments can kill more people trying to enforce measles vaccinations than the disease will actually hurt or maim or kill? It's disgusting. Measles has always been a childhood disease. And we wouldn't be having this resurgence of it if the stupid-ass government wasn't allowing these people to come in unchecked. It's a biological invasion. It is biological warfare. It absolutely 100% is. Biological, sociological, and it's going to turn into a war of weapons once they get established. Look at Ilhan Omar the other day. What'd she say? First of all, she says, oh, something was done by some people. Yeah, we're talking about 9/11, first of all. But the thing that really got me is she says, hey, this country's not for white people. Now, people say, Roy, you're taking that out of context. No, she said just what she meant. This country's not for white people. Instead of saying this country is for all people, she said this country's not for white people. Ooh. If President Trump is successful in getting the Muslim Brotherhood declared a terrorist organization, which he should, CAIR is going to be out. Ilhan Omar should be arrested. And so should Tlaib. Anybody who has associations with that group. We'll see. I know, Cyber 54, they are steamrolling over us, I know. And that's why I keep holding out the Trump. No one person can fix this, not even the president, especially with the lack of help that he's had, and I recognize that. But, and I've used this analogy before, if Eisenhower had brought over Himmler to help him in his war room in Britain during World War II, he probably wouldn't have been successful on D-Day or anything else. You get my point? And that's exactly what Trump's done. He's brought the Himmlers that have stood against his program into his war room. And it doesn't make any sense to me. And I know he was trying to keep the government running and all that, but why? I mean, I get that letter from President Trump. You guys remember that, right? I got that letter from President Trump. And I'm thinking, gee, that's really nice. He appreciates what I've said. But when are you going to do it? And I could tell you what that was all about, but I'm probably not. I don't think I will. All I'll say is that he needs to put the military on the border today. Not for wheeling the migrants around and feeding them in our mess halls, but to get ready to go into Mexico as John Pershing did after Pancho Villa. And don't believe that it's a law enforcement situation on the border anymore. It's not. It's not. It's a military problem, not a law enforcement problem. Not anymore. Once they get in, being nabbed by law enforcement or military nabbing them, giving them over to law enforcement, whatever, that's fine. But that thing right at the border, that's a military problem. And for him to ignore it, he's more concerned. Well, Venezuela, and I don't want to get into that, but Venezuela is causing some of this migration. I realize that. But they always want to get involved in something like that, and they won't take care of what's going on in their own home. And that irritates me, and Trump has done that just way too many times. Yeah, I agree, Ahal. That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at a half a dozen, 2 dozen tops. Ahal says, forget about the big guys being locked up, maybe a few for show. If this was real, it would have been locked up immediately after the election to stop us bleeding. Boy, isn't that true. Yeah, good guys don't play games. Yeah. At this point in time, if Trump doesn't act, then he's the problem. If Barr goes after even a half a dozen people, Trump needs to go totally on the offensive. We'll see. I'm from I'm from Missouri. I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. Suzig, who is William Barr? He's the Attorney General of the United States. And then the case, Williams versus the United States, is a 1992, which is what we were talking about. That's mentioned in the Mueller report, and I gave you the U.S. reports link in the description box, where the lower court said that the prosecutors must bring exculpatory evidence. They can't ignore it and not give it to the grand jury, and then the Supreme Court reversed that and said, no, the prosecutors don't have to bring exculpatory evidence. It's really disgusting. I understand why they did that, but to allow that kind of prosecutorial misconduct and conspiracy is wrong in our system. Yeah, I agree with you, Mark S.E. Mueller is the ultimate deceiver. He is, and that's exactly right. And I think Barr knows that now. Like I say, Barr's no angel, but he is. But I do believe he is interested in. Well, he's first interested in saving the DOJ and the FBI, and secondly, maybe the Republic. I'm not sure how he views that, and I don't want to misjudge him. But that's why I played that little clip there from yesterday, because he doesn't take any guff off anybody, and I think he might just pull this off. It'll be a miracle if he does. God bless him. God help him if that's the case. But his life is going to be in danger. You understand that, right? His life is in danger. Trump's life's in danger. Hell, Lindsey Graham's life is in danger at this point. So, yeah, and you're right, Christina Wilson. It looks like this can't be solved in the legal system. You might be right. We're giving Barr a chance. But God help us if this doesn't work, because it will turn into, if you don't know what happened in Yugoslavia in the 90s, after Tito died, he was the dictator over Yugoslavia, and what happened there with the Balkanization between the Bosniaks, the Serbians and the Croats, and neighbor fighting neighbor, and I mean the slaughter. The cemetery in Sarajevo is the largest in the world. It's tragic. It's terrible. And what they tried to do to Ukraine was very similar, and we were doing that. Victoria Nuland, Obama, caused those Ukrainians have been suffering for so many years. First of all, they were starved out by Stalin. Millions of them died. Then World War II came along. Another millions of them died. And then they pull this crap now. Say they hate Nazis, and yet Nazis are running the place. McCain's partly responsible for that. He's another deceiver. I'm glad he's gone. I wonder what happened to him when he got on the other side. I shudder to think. Of course, his daughter doesn't want us to talk like that, but tough luck. I don't blame you for Cyber 54. The only faith I have now is in the Lord God. Well, that's the only faith you should have anyway. But you try to make those who represent you in government do the right thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, Jesus even did that with the Pharisees. You come to sea and land, and to make one proselyte, when he is made, he is twice the child of hell than yourselves. You are whited sepulchres. You set up as commandments the doctrines of men. He fought them tooth and toenail. So trusting in God, having faith in God, yeah, but you can still call the evil out, and we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to do that. Serious issues concerning Mr. Potter, Dorothy Leatherbarrow. Well, if you believe all this stuff, I mean, most of my followers, Dorothy Leatherbarrow, most of them already know it. I've shown my books. I've written about it. There's a lot of disinformation out there promulgated by the IC because I stand against it, the intelligence community. There's a monitor here. I don't know if they're here, but if you start spouting that stuff, Dorothy, they'll probably say, you're out of here. I've been a public figure since the 70s. My life's an open book. Just because I don't talk about it all the time, because we've got this stuff to talk about, and I have nothing to apologize for, okay? So you're a little concerned about serious issues concerning me. Most everybody knows about it. Where have you been? That's all I'll say to you. I started getting attacked by so-called investigators, these guys who make a living off the internet by falsely accusing people, because I stood up for Monograph and the false accusations that were being made against him. All right, and then they started calling me the same things they were calling Monograph. It's all lies. They have no evidence, and Satan is the false accuser of the brethren. They're satanic people that do that, okay? That's all I'll say. I'm not going to spend any more time with it. Teddy Armstrong, what did I say? He's saying that, a bunch of people with no law experience. What did I say when I first started talking? I said I'm not a lawyer, but I have common sense. And I've been a law enforcement, and I've been, all of that stuff. Yes, I do know. And just because we're the common people doesn't mean that we don't have a voice in how this thing works. The system is corrupt. Lawyers are corrupt. Are you a lawyer, Teddy Armstrong? If you are, you're not doing a good job. Now, you and I have had a little banter back and forth a couple of times. Okay, no big deal. I don't mind that you come up with contrary statements or disagreements. But I will talk about the law, and I will talk about how corrupt it is, because it's manifestly the case. Actually, I've argued cases in court pro se before. Actually, I've done that. And of course, I've testified in court many, many times. I've brought criminal cases, both in the military and in civilian police departments. I know how the system works. So don't tell me that I can't discuss it. I'm not going to give legal advice, but I can tell you how corrupt the system is, and by damn it is. So think about that, Teddy. I hope you stick around, but I'm not going to take your bullshit either. Yeah, very, very good. M. Little O. Barr is in the fight for his life now, just like Trump. Exactly. That's what I said. That's why I'm starting to have some faith in him. I don't think this is a show. I think this is real. That's why I played that. Well, may we ask that you share it with us? No. Yeah, he's in the fight for his life. He is. Can you believe they want to impeach him, or worse, charge him with conspiracy, all this stuff? Goes back to what Teddy said. Yes, I can comment on it, and yes, I will. Thank you. Yeah, Mueller was involved with Russia. Barr's old law firm got that pedophilia island guy off. Acosta. Yeah, you're talking about Epstein. Yeah, like I say, Barr has some problems in his past. I agree. But he may have had an epiphany. He may have had a come-to-Jesus moment. We'll see. Okay, right now, the word on the street from DeGeneva to who would know, I mean, the guy was a U.S. attorney and is a friend of Barr's, has said that prosecutions are coming. And all the evidence is showing that that's the case. We'll see. I'm waiting. Yeah, Gene Lloyd Bradbury, that's one of the problems. Asset forfeiture laws do cause cops to become corrupt. I agree. Should never have happened. The Fourth Amendment should apply even when there's no criminal charge, because the government is still taking your property. Absolutely, 100%. Okay, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. Wow. Thank you, Janet, We the People. She says, Chris Ann is a must-see. You will learn a lot. Absolutely. I met Chris Ann. She probably doesn't remember. I'm a nobody. But I'm very impressed with her. Yes. And I've watched a lot of her things. So that goes for Teddy Armstrong, too. If you don't want to listen to me about it, go listen to Chris Ann Hall. She is certainly qualified to talk about it. And I think if she knows who I am, she will say that yes, I am qualified to talk about it. I just can't give legal advice like she can. Edelson James, I plead the fifth. I get a kick out of you. You're all right. Who is the man with the gun in the corner? Okay. That sounds like a song from the 70s. Yeah, the White House needs to read the Constitution again. I agree. I don't think Trump has. He needs to sit down one day, probably with Jay Sekulow, or I don't know about Rudy Giuliani. He needs to sit there. He really does need to read the Constitution. Yeah, from start to finish, and slow enough that he can ponder it. I don't expect him to be, an attorney or a constitutional professor afterwards, but he definitely needs a working knowledge of it, in my estimation. Especially if he's going to claim that he wants to follow it, then he's got to know what it says, and I'm not so sure that he does. Boy, I'm sorry I get talking so much that I lose some of the statements you guys are making with each other. Spiral Bear, I was just looking for your live stream and it was hidden. No kidding, no surprise. Still pisses me off though. I'm not allowed to catch a full Roy live stream. Spiral Bear, you know how this censorship thing works. They demonetize me, but I don't take any money from anybody. Like I've told everybody before who've accused me of doing this for money, all those ads you see are from the music and the graphics that Pam Jones used to make my introductions. The money goes to those people that did that. I don't get anything from YouTube. I don't have PayPal. I don't have any of that stuff. So, okay. I guess you guys are arguing with each other. Edelson James has blocked somebody. I don't know why. Okay. Well, like I said, I don't want to go any longer. Let me just bust down through you real fast. If anybody brings anything up that... Outlaw Morgan, you still try to get me on your show and get wrecked. Yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't even mention this. Hop in, Sin. Roy, you look extremely nice today. It's the lighting, okay. In person, I'm not nearly as impressive. I guarantee you. Teddy Armstrong, no, I shouldn't even address it. He says you just bragged about your sort of law degree. Now you are saying it's evil. Which one, Roy? I think you're just trying to make an argument for no reason. I have an undergraduate bachelor's degree in law and justice administration, which included how to research, like the Supreme Court, how to find out the elements of crimes, how to do paralegal work like briefs to the court, how to run a court. Yes, I've been in and out of that for probably older. I'm probably in it longer than you've been alive. Maybe not. So anyway, I'm not going to address you again, Teddy. That's it. Okay. I'm not going to address you again. So I'm going down here real to Barr Julian Jules Z. Barr lies trying to protect corruption. Well, he has in the past. That's what lawyers do, which is kind of a problem. But let's see if he has. Let's see if he does the job this time. I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. Look at the Dems trying to accuse him of conspiracy, of lying, and want to impeach him and all that baloney. So he's getting attacked by them. Let's just see if he does the right thing. I mean, what else are we going to do? I mean, we could hit the streets like the yellow vests are in France, which is another interesting thing we could probably talk about sometime. Again, governments are corrupt, man. It's all about their power. They don't want to give it up. The EU is evil. I knew about the EU back when I was in junior high school. It wasn't the EU then, but we knew it was coming. Oh, and then I thought, pardon me, Dan Bongino, I know you're not watching me, but this might get back to you. Dan Bongino had a good program yesterday. He says, look at what socialist countries do. They have these armored cars, if you saw that yesterday, armored vehicles running over protesters in Venezuela, in Caracas, I think is where it was. The point is that there's a civil war going on there now, and a coup, and probably some other things. But the government, trying to stay in power, is willing to kill its own people. In France, they're shooting those bullets out of those. They're rubber bullets, but the velocity's like 10 times faster than a pellet gun or a paintball gun. Anyway, it's really seriously hurting people. That's all right. Yeah, fine, no problem. Yeah, really. So they show what happened. Dan Bongino say, look what they did in Venezuela, running over people, shooting them, etc. All he has to do is look at Waco, Ruby Ridge, and Bundy Ranch. And at Bundy Ranch, it would have been vehicles running over people, hundreds, if not more, shot, killed by the federal government there. Thank goodness for Sheriff Robertson stepping in. He wasn't the elected sheriff, he was a deputy, but he stepped in and told the BLM to leave, because the whole thing had been a setup. And I could see it in the morning that they were preparing something other than what the sheriff was telling us at the demonstration area on the Bunkerville Road. What the sheriff was telling us and what they were actually setting up to do were two different things. It was a deliberate plan to murder people that day and to entrap people. That's all it was, because they didn't want people standing up against what they were doing, what the federal government was doing. In other words, using your First Amendment. They didn't like that. That's what it was all about. Larry C213, quote, AG Barr is growing on me. Do not be fooled. Well, yeah, and I've given you the caveat, Larry C213. Yeah, there's a caveat. But he is growing on me. I mean, his counter to especially Blumenthal yesterday, Senator Blumenthal, who's an outright liar, a well-known liar. I thought it was fantastic. So, and he says, and his friends like Joe DeGenevis say he's going to do something. I'm not fooled. I said I'm waiting to see it. I'm from Missouri, but he is growing on me. I really like his style. I really do. I'm not ashamed to say it. Yeah, I know the House wants to take down Barr for not appearing today, say that he's in contempt. Yeah, right. There's nothing they could do to get at this guy, I don't think. Not the House. Not the Democrats in the House. I don't think they can get him. He can indict so many of them, and that's really what they're doing. They're trying to get out ahead of the events that may be coming. Because seriously, most of the Democrats have done serious. Look at the sexual slush fund. There are serious things out there, and they're just trying to point the finger at Barr so that he won't come after them. I think it could very well be that they've misunderstood him, and all they're doing is they're verifying to him that he needs to take them out. And he can't do it when Congress is in session, okay? But once they're out of session, once they walk out, when a session ends, if he's got evidence on him, he can take him. And I hope he does. Okay. Yeah, Kevin, honey, you don't know about the sex slush fund in the Congress? Yeah, your taxpayer money was put into a fund to take care of sex harassment lawsuits against senators and congressmen. Yeah, I'm surprised you don't know about that. Yeah, Trump is surrounded by enemies, and a lot of that's his own fault. Even Larry Johnson, a CIA analyst I think it was on Alex Jones yesterday, said that that's the one thing he finds Trump to be the biggest fault in, is that he surrounded himself with the wrong people. And it's not that he didn't know better. He should have known better, and if he didn't, not good. Okay, I think we're done. Hopefully this thing, I see that the stream is still acting up a little bit. I hope you got some good information today. Again, I know when you talk about legal things, it's extremely taxing. You know, it's like, you know, a lot. Even I, when they would talk in school, my eyes would glass over, and my eyes would start rolling around in my head, and I go, God, this is ridiculous stuff. I mean, it should be real simple. Did it hurt somebody or didn't it? If it hurt somebody, it's pretty clear cut. If it didn't, then what's the big deal? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You know, but the legal system has become corrupt. And the larger it gets, the worse it'll get. And that's been the case throughout time, from time immemorial till now. Lawyers have a tendency to become corrupt. It's just the nature of the game. Again, Shakespeare said, first thing we do is kill all the lawyers, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just saying that, well, here's another joke that I'm sure most of you have heard it. Why won't a snake bite a lawyer? Why will a snake not bite a lawyer? Professional courtesy. There are good ones. There are good ones. You know, one of the things that makes a cop a good cop is that actually he has the mind of a criminal. He or she has the mind of a criminal, but the wolf that cop feeds is the good stuff. So even though he can understand a criminal mind, he wouldn't do it, but it gives him the insight. And lawyers can be the same way. They've gone through the training. They know what good lawyers are. They know what bad lawyers are, and people like Cernovich can do a lot of good. So we'll see. Thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you have a nice day. Keep your eyes on your horizon, your ears to the ground, situational awareness on high, especially now. May is here. Again, you're going to see an uptick in leftist Marxist activity, which we've already seen with Antifa, drug cartels, FBI warning on the border about the Antifa going to get weapons from the cartels, which I said the other day seems a little spurious to me, but I do believe that the Antifa would ally with anybody that they can that could help them to disrupt and to overthrow the United States and our constitutional hopes. I think it's on the horizon. I think they're going to pick up the steam. So keep your situational awareness, on at all times. I fear some bad things are on the horizon, regardless. All right. Prep, pray, stay out of the way as much as you can, but do not hesitate to defend yourself. Go out and get that AR-15 as a political statement, if nothing else, but also for self-defense. Learn how to use it, learn how to take it apart, clean it, sight it in, understand how it works, know what windage and elevation are, minute of angle, all that stuff. Go out there and find that stuff out, okay? It's important. God bless you. God bless yours. God bless the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and the Second American Revolution. And may God bless Donald Trump and all of his righteous endeavors. And may God send him the spirit of discernment that Trump will know the right from the wrong and have the courage to do the right thing. We're right there where it needs to happen. If it doesn't happen soon, it's not going to happen. So prepare accordingly. Until next time, thanks for coming.